Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Christopher Moonlight's Brutally Honest Storytelling Notes, where I am either brutally honest or I am also brutally kind about stories I like. But today I'm going to talk about something that I've already dedicated, I think, like 7 episodes to, made some people angry, which is Alien 3. And in my interview with Chuck Dixon, which if you haven't checked it out, it's on my YouTube channel. Go ahead and check that out because it's a really fun interview. I mentioned that I didn't like Alien 3, and Chuck said, Chuck, what did you say?
I said it was the only legitimate sequel to Alien.
Blasphemy! No. We this cannot stand. So I invited Chuck on to debate this with me. Now, all seriousness, I know I'm part of a lot of the alien communities on Facebook and that sort of thing. People can take this very seriously. I don't take this seriously. You know, it's a movie. I loved Alien. I love aliens. I was very disappointed in Alien 3, but it's just a movie, and I'm not asking for a retcon or a reboot or a fan edit or anything like this. It's a 25-year-old movie. I just like to talk about where I think it went wrong because I think people can learn storytelling-wise from it. But, Chuck is actually a much more successful writer than me, so, he's probably got why am I saying it like you're not here? You've got legitimate points. So seriously though, you didn't like Aliens?
It's not that I didn't like it. It's certainly enjoyable, but it's like candy or an ice cream cone, you know, uh, after Alien. And
Ah,
I mean, I went back to the movies and saw it a bunch of times. I mean, I really enjoyed it, but watching it over time, the seams begin to show, and the shift in tone from the first movie becomes more apparent, when you watch them all together, which I did like last year. Marathon
did
the
you
whole franchise.
even Resurrection?
Yeah, well, yeah, even Resurrection.
Oh, and what now? Just kind of as an aside, before we dive too deep in, what did you think of the Ridley Scott quote unquote prequels, Prometheus and Alien Covenant?
The prequel, yeah, Prometheus is probably one of the prettiest yet dumbest movies ever made. Covenant, I liked. I've watched that a few times. It had its problems, but I liked it because it's so darn pretty to look at. Um, and I think the problem with all of these franchises, you have the initial creators and what they had in mind, and then because it takes decades for these franchises to play out, it gives fans lots of room to imagine how they would have done it, or imagine what the universe is like and fill in the gaps. And nobody's ever going to be entirely happy with every franchise. It's like, well, that didn't go the way I thought it would. Um, and but I think with Covenant, it's Scott trying to return to what he started. I don't know what Prometheus was. That was a train wreck from beginning to end, and none of it made sense.
Yeah, well, for me, Covenant and like I enjoyed Prometheus, but like you said, it was just really kind of fun to look at. I had some fun moments. That MedPod automated surgery thing was kind of a blast. Uh,
The purpose that served is to firmly establish Numi Rapace as the most abused woman in cinema history.
I mean, I think he said that he saw a girl with a dragon tattoo and became enamored with her and wanted to work with her, and she's an excellent actress. I think and he did put her through the ringer, but I felt
Yeah,
like,
she really needs to make a comedy.
isn't that what Bright was? No, um, I'm taking pot shots at other movies now. Now, okay, so here's the thing with me and movies and why I think Alien 3 to me doesn't work, and that's because I thought that Aliens was a logical progression in that universe in terms of, okay, if the first one was quote unquote cosmic horror, although I kind of debate that as well. I think it's sort of cosmic horror, but it's also sort of the science fiction equivalent of man versus nature. in that the alien could or maybe isn't considered nature, but it's still, it's you go out into the frontier, you encounter something that you have never seen before, whether it be the native population or some species of poisonous animal that you're not prepared for, or some disease or something like that, and it kills you, and maybe one person makes it back to tell the tale, and then the next people to go out come more prepared. So that's why Aliens makes sense to me. And it also, I enjoyed the idea that it was a survivor that nobody takes seriously, and then she meets another survivor in Newt. And so I felt like it was a logical progression, and I really enjoyed it. And to me, Alien 3 kind of felt like people going, no, F you, we don't want that kind of story. We know you loved it, and we're actually going to kind of rub it in your face how much we hate it by killing Newt and doing a gruesome autopsy and totally like just casting him into a pit of flames. And but that's the part where I took it a little personally, maybe. Okay, sounds like I'm taking it personally. So I feel like thematically Aliens was kind of more of a logical progression, and Alien 3 was kind of going like, wanting to go back into the nihilistic, you'll die no matter what, which is, I guess, would be considered the H.P. Lovecraft-ism. But yeah, that's kind of my stance on it. But you know what? Hey, I completely forgot, though. Before we go any further and get your response with that, we're not just doing this to talk about Alien 3. We've got something to promote, because you are writing a story in a new comic book. Is it an anthology, or is it all revolve around the same characters? I'm talking about Thrilling Comics, which is an Indiegogo for right now.
Yeah, it's an anthology. It's three. It's like the old Golden Age comics. It's 3 stories in each issue, and by the end of the 3 issues, each one is a complete 24-page story.
But that's excellent. So we're getting I'm not a digest, but we're getting a graphic novel sized book here with 3 stories. And Thrilling Comics, this is superheroes, and you're writing it, and also let's see, Clint Stoker and David, does he say it Furr? Furr? Is that?
Yeah.
So Downcast, by the way, man, that looks great. And that guy kind of came out of nowhere with just this great comic book concept idea, and really kind of just had a breakout hit on his hand. He's a novelist, as you are a novelist. But this comic looks really exciting. So I wanted to mention to the audience that this is something you got to check out, and I'm going to leave a link to the Indiegogo. Do you want to say anything about it before we move on to?
Well, yeah, they sort of offered me. It's all public domain Golden Age characters that we're sort of rebooting, and they gave me a choice. They gave me like this laundry list of characters that were available, and I picked Lee Elias's Black Cat, the old Harvey comics, because I love that series, and we had to change the name to the Cat in Black because of obvious reasons. Because of Marvel has Black Cat trademark. But it's still the same thing. It's about a stunt woman actress in Hollywood who moonlights as a vigilante. And I had a lot of fun with the story. It's like a throwback to the old 1940s comedy mysteries, though it's set present day.
Well, it looks excellent. The artwork is absolutely beautiful. And, of course, with you writing, it's always going to be a good time. But that doesn't let you off the hook for your thoughts on Alien 3. So thematically, what did Alien mean to you, and how do you think that Alien 3 kind of makes it a true sequel?
Well, Alien, to me, it is man versus nature, but it's also man as losing his place on the food chain. Wherever the alien shows up, it's superior and will always, come out on top. The larger the environment, the more successful it will be. And my problems with Aliens 2 was, because I'm not going to let aliens off the hook. My problem with it, James Cameron movies are like conversations that you have when you're drunk, and they make sense. And then when you sober up, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe the crap I said. Uh, because, I mean, you've got to admit, in a James Cameron movie, like 10 years out, 20 years out from a James Cameron movie, you rewatch it and you go, oh my God, this dialogue. Because Aliens 2 is loaded with painful dialogue. The other problem is I don't see it as a logical progression from Alien because, you know, why would, they send these colonial Marines who obviously aren't prepared at all for the mission. And and in dialogue, they reference hunting other aliens. They talk about a bug hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So we believe they hunted other kinds of extraterrestrial creatures, but they don't seem to know what they're up against with this one. And they wander into that alien environment, that sort of organic, goopy hive. And none of them seem particularly alarmed or, they don't send anybody on point. There's nobody on drag. There's no military discipline whatsoever. And the first alien they run into, they totally lose their shit. And, but up to this point, they've been macho posturing and talking about how tough they are and how they're not afraid. And the problem with it is James Cameron's obvious loathing for the military. And it's in everything he's ever written. This guy just doesn't like the military. And he wanted them to look like buffoons.
Interesting.
It was the story, because if the Wayland Corporation really wanted specimens of these critters, wouldn't they have sent their own people, as they did in Alien 3?
Yeah, this is where Alien 3 kind of also goes off the rails for me. Because going back to Aliens, though, my impression was that these Marines, yes, they had hunted other extraterrestrials, but they'd been out in space so long, kind of left unchecked by the regular chain of command, that they had kind of gotten a little overconfident in how easy it was for them to kind of essentially end up being what were exterminators. That's the impression I got. Now, there is a lot of kind of supplementary material out in the Aliens novels that have come out, and different comic books and that sort of thing. That even some of them even gave those Marines a bit more backstory. But the idea was that they kind of had this. They were kind of a cleaning crew. They'd come in, they'd see some insect-like creatures that were harassing the colonists and blast them and be on their way. And one of the things I've always had a problem with, which I thought Aliens actually dealt with very well, was the idea that this corporation, wants to collect these aliens for their bioweapons division. I'm not exactly sure what that is. But in Aliens, it was kind of, the company was more interested in their investment. It was only Burke individually who saw an opportunity for him. He wasn't operating under the orders of the company. He was kind of going out there to cover his ass because he knew he'd screwed up by trying to, go behind the chain of command and send these colonists out there. So, it kind of made Burke more of like a guy trying to get some footing on the corporate ladder, kind of underhandedly. Because to me, I always thought, these aliens, I don't know, they seem like a bad investment. They seem like they're going to devour your assets. So when they go back to Alien 3 and they send out the guy that created Bishop, which I always thought was kind of corny. Like, hey, we're just getting this Lance Henriksen appearance in here for some reason. I don't know. It just didn't make sense to me. Like, why do they want this thing? It's just destroying everything it comes in contact with. I think it'd be in their interest to wipe it out. But I thought that the Marines were just kind of, like I said, they were screw ups. They'd been left unchecked for too long. It's just like, hey, we're gonna go out there and the impression I got when they woke up from their cryo sleep was they were probably already in space, floating out there in hibernation, and then Ripley and them met up and went into hibernation with them, because when they all woke up, they're like, wait, who are these people? So I don't know. I see your point though, and of course, this also goes back to Rambo 2, which is kind of beat for beat Aliens in a way as well, right?
Right.
I haven't seen Rambo 2, but I heard about it and read the synopsis of the story, and it sounds like the same thing. Rambo like literally says, "We get to win this time, right?" I can't do a Rambo impersonation, but
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I mean, Rambo 2, we see Cameron's disdain for the military on display as well, because every military person except for Rambo in the movie is a complete a-hole and has a lot of the same kind of macho posturing, that we see in Aliens. These guys are just, D-bags for the most part. And the thing is, I mean, you can say, okay, well, they're exterminators. But if we're looking at this like a hunting experience, they're hunting a species that they've never seen before. And if you're out in the woods hunting deer and you come across a 40-pound pile of bear shit, the game has changed. And these guys don't seem aware the game has changed on them. I mean, it's just, just looking back, Cameron didn't like these characters, and it's hard for us. Well, it's impossible to like them, except for the Michael Biehn character, and of course he's like an idiot that Ripley just orders around for the rest of the movie.
yeah, interesting. I never got the impression that he didn't like the characters, because I always thought that they had kind of great arcs. I've always kind of been enamored with the arc between Vasquez and Gorman. And yes, he is a screw up, but the guy that's in command of the mission and screws up, and his kind of her disdain for him because she blames him for the death of her partner. And then at the end of their arc, he gets to redeem himself by showing courage and going back for her, and when they can't escape, pulling the plug on that grenade. So,
Yeah, those are all war movie cliches that Cameron's like put on here. I mean, he get just the constant digs at the military. I mean, he makes it so that, Bill Paxton is the most braggadocious of them all, and he's the first one to go totally coward when they realize what they're up against. I mean, little side commentaries like that. And this is a theme throughout his movies, the Abyss as well. Where Michael Biehn gets to play, basically the crazed Vietnam vet.
Yeah, he with the what was it, the deep sea pressure madness, or something like that.
But he's kind of a jerk right from the beginning, and he just becomes more of a jerk, as he goes through, oxygen deprivation.
Yeah, that's it. I wasn't that into the Abyss. It was just kind of, it's too slow a movie and too kind of like, what the hell ending.
And the dialogue in that one makes you want to watch it in French. I mean, it is just, my God, the dialogue. And that's another movie. I really enjoyed it when I saw it. But then years later watching it again, it's like, oh my God, this dialogue is awful. And most of the cast is unlikable.
Yeah, that I did have a problem with most of the character. No, I can't actually think of a single character I actually did like. I just enjoyed the miniature work in that, and I should say I'm a big fan of James Cameron's effects work until he got computers going the way they are now, because he had to get so creative. He was so creative in how to make special effects work on limitations, and that made them more interesting. But once he said, hey, we can just do it in the computer, it was just like, now.
Yeah, there's no limits to my imagination, and that's not a good thing.
Exactly. Well, the limitations cause you to get creative. I mean, even you working as a comic book writer with artists, you work with a certain kind of certain artist, you get a sense of, what's he good at, what's he not so good at, and you kind of have to work with and write in the context of that. If somebody's really good with superheroes, then you're doing a superhero story. If they're good at like nasty creatures, like say Kelly Jones is, then you're more likely to go towards a horror themed story. You play to their strengths, and you understand their limitations, and that makes you creative as a writer. At least I imagine so.
Well, yeah, there's also general limitations when you're writing a comic. I mean, no matter how good the artist is, you can't ask them to draw the entire Chinese army for page after page after page. You have to get inventive with, how you're going to. There's a lot of tricks that comic writers and comic artists use to get around some of those things.
Yeah, pardon me. I'm going to yell at the dog. Winston, shut it. He's the guard dachshund. He's anyway, I think the mailman's going by. So
I used to have a schnauzer. I understand.
Oh yeah, how many rounds do those hold again? Sorry, I couldn't help it. They always sounded like a German gun. So okay, so all right. So right now we're kind of in the debate about James Cameron, and I agree with you. Like I didn't like Avatar.
Because I wasn't just going to let you trash on Aliens 3 without letting me trash on Aliens.
No, hey, this is an important part of the conversation. I will say I didn't. It's not Alien 3. I thought overall was just a very flawed story, and it had a lot of story ticks that just didn't work well for me. But I thought the overall premise could have worked with just a few adjustments, and it could have worked in a way that satisfied both fans of Alien and fans of Alien 3. Or sorry, fans of don't let me get my schnauzer. Anyway, yes, apologies for the Winsta barking. Ever since we got this dog, my podcast game has been thrown off. The dog I chose is sleeping next to my side. He doesn't care. So Aliens, and also I kind of just want to make a comment too about Ridley Scott's Alien prequels, which is to say that you know what, my Halloween costume is I'm going to put this dachshund in a baby harness and have him poking through my shirt. He's going to be my chest burster. The chest burster is going to bark at everybody everywhere I go. Okay, so Alien 3. Now, my problem with it is I did like Newt as a character. I did like the idea, and I was personally never military, so I was kind of naive to what you're pointing out with, and I've heard other people point out that the Marines are kind of not what you would get out of Marines at all. But it was, for me, it was a fun movie in the terms of like, hey, we're going to go back, we're going to be more prepared. And I love the idea that, these aliens, you did need armor-piercing bullets to destroy them. I did not like Ridley Scott's idea that I don't like the idea of a completely unstoppable creature. It's because once you do that, then it becomes uninteresting. Unless, I don't know, there were certain things in Alien that told me, yes, this thing could be stopped. One of them is that they cut open a finger of the face hugger when trying to remove it from Kane's face, and it bled acid, and what was Yaphet? What was that character's name? Anyway, he says, wonderful defense mechanism, you don't dare kill it. So I like the idea that this thing had these very alien defenses, but it was still, yes, you could kill it at the cost of, burning a hole through your ship and, losing all your oxygen. So I did like the idea that there was a way to combat them, but the price for doing it was getting sprayed with acid and having to run for your life. The idea in Alien 3 of just going back to 1 and then kind of just running around dark tunnels for an hour and a half, and essentially undoing I feel like a movie shouldn't undo the previous movie. There are ways to say, okay, we want to do this differently, but to kind of just, say like, okay, never mind all that. it didn't work for me. And then as the movie goes on, there are other story problems that arise. But I I want to kind of start out with, what do you like about Alien 3? Did you like that they killed Newton Hicks right from the start? Or
Uh, that was a shocker. I didn't expect that, and um, it's kind of under dramatized because they didn't have the actors.
mm-hmm.
So there's no flashback or anything like that. Um, so that we see the characters again. I do like that they just didn't use scenes from the previous movie, but then it's all up to Sigourney Weaver to dramatize those scenes, and I think she does it well. I mean, but it could have used some sort of visual, just bring back. Well, the little girl wasn't little anymore, I assume, and I mean, today I guess they would just CGI them, but
Yeah.
some sort of a flashback, but they couldn't do it, so they didn't do it, and they just left it on her, and I think she did a great job. It was a shocker, but as the film progressed on, I realized they're making a concerted effort to return to the tone of the first film, and go back to the somber mood piece that the first film was. And I appreciated that aspect. I'm by no means saying that Aliens 3 is a great movie. I'm just saying that it's a return to what the franchise was supposed to be.
I've got you on the ropes now.
But I never said it was a great movie. But there's a lot of things I like about it. I like the fact that they firmly established that whatever creature the alien lays its egg in is going to alter the final form of the alien itself.
I did like that too. I thought that was an idea that was in other scripts for Alien 3 that didn't get produced. They actually had one that was not centered around any of the characters from the previous films at all. No Ripley, nothing like that. It was a soldier who was kind of investigating what the company was doing, and they actually had a room where they had like chicken aliens and like all these weird species variations, which it sounds corny when you say it out loud, but the potential for what that could mean in terms of visuals and coming up with other cool designs, and if they had gotten H.R. Giger on that, I think it would have been fantastic. So I did like that. And by the way, question for you here. Do you prefer the assembly cut like other people do, or do you think the theatrical cut was the superior cut?
Boy, I don't, I can't remember the difference between the two at this point.
Yeah.
So the only time I saw the theatrical cut was actually in the theater. And, and obviously I've seen the later cuts after that. So I can't remember the differences between the two.
I saw the assembly cut and forgot about it, and then people started, whenever I'd say I didn't like Alien 3, people would start saying, well, the assembly cut is far superior. And I actually disagree. I think the assembly cut goes on too long and is kind of really meanders. People call it character development. Oh, there's more character development, but for me, character development is useless if it doesn't factor into the story. And that was kind of one of my big problems with the Clemens arc, the Doctor. They talked about his character development, and I was like, really? He doesn't have too much. He's an interesting character, but what a lot of people consider to be his character development is just when he kind of stops the movie for his sob story and then gets unceremoniously killed, which a lot of people will argue. Oh, by the way, spoilers if you haven't seen Alien 3, which says, I know people they're going to know spoilers. But people, oh, that was so shocking because that means anybody could die. And I went like, yeah, but we haven't really spent much time with any other characters to, have anybody else to kind of jump over to except for Ripley, and we know she's in it for the entire movie. So I don't know. I would have, if he was going to tell that sob story, I would have had that factor into something that happens to him later in the movie, and maybe he does die, but maybe he dies in some sort of act of redeeming himself for that that past mistake. But I don't know, like what did you?
Well, okay, I'm recalling this now. Yeah, I remember. I don't like that sequence because it stops the movie in its tracks. I didn't really need any more character development. It was enough for me to know that Ripley is an alien in this environment herself, and these guys are all to one degree or another broken men. And also, here's Fincher borrowing a war movie cliche. The guy tells a sob story, then dies. It's the equivalent of the GI getting the letter from home, and you know he's the next one to die. I mean, Coppola even borrowed that one for Apocalypse Now. The guy gets the cassette tape from home. He updated the cliche. And then that GI is dead within a minute after the cassette tape is over. So yeah, I didn't appreciate that. I would have, from that aspect, I prefer the theatrical cut. I don't think these guys needed any more development than they gave.
Actually, that is in the theatrical cut. That's
oh, it is.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. The other,
I'm confused between the two cuts. Now, is that still in the assembly cut or taken out?
No, it's still in the assembly cut as well.
Yeah, it's a bad scene.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that where the characters just kind of state things about themselves with Charles Dutton's character saying, well, I'm a murderer and rapist of women. Like, who just blurts that out?
Well, I think for me that had a lot of weight because Charles S. Dutton was a murderer, is a murderer in real life, so convicted murderer. So that's sort of like, ooh, that was gutsy, But yeah, it's yeah, they didn't need all that stuff, and I forget where I was going. Continue. I had a point. I'll remember it.
Do you like in your mind, if say you got to write Alien 3, do you have kind of a story in mind that you would have done?
I remember the point I was going to make. I mean, a lot in movies like this, in where there's a threat, a constant dangerous threat to the characters going on throughout the story, and people start talking about their past lives or how much they like walks in the rain, and you're like, there's a monster out there. Why are you even talking about this? It's like when I watch zombie things and people get all involved in their own personal problems. I'm like, there's zombies out there. Who cares about what you yes, or if you don't like this guy. What does he think of me? Who gives a crap? There's zombies outside. So it'd be like making a Titanic movie where everyone's discussing what they had for breakfast while the ship's going down. So, I wish they had eschewed that. These guys were just fine the way they were, and the actors they hired, were good enough that they made a distinction between each character, so they all seemed different. We didn't need their backstories. Yeah,
and I have to say, why don't I do this? Why don't I talk about the things that I did like about Alien 3? So I'm get that on the table so I don't seem like I'm overly bashing it. But yes, the actors were fantastic. I did think that Charles Dutton, because there's two Charles Dance and Charles Dutton in the movie, so I got to get them straight. Charles Dutton, for me, was a bit over the top with his kind of sermon voice that he was always putting on. I realized that was the character, but it seemed tonally just kind of out of place in what everything else we'd experienced in the Aliens franchise thus far. But he is a really great actor, and Charles Dance was fantastic, and the actors who played the prison warden and 85, you're absolutely right. They really did distinguish themselves. One of the actors who played, what was the name of it? I want to say Golem. I know it's not Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But the kind of the crazy guy who escapes, and they think he killed the prisoners, and he's like ranting and raving about the alien. He kind of kept changing character, and later on he said, it's like we got so many different changes and notes, like we kept doing different things, and then it came off weird in the movie. But I think they did excellent work. I did have a problem with them all having shaved heads because they all looked the same. So I'd be like, oh, wait a minute, didn't that guy just get killed? And then he's like, okay, I guess someone else got killed. I had no sense of who a lot of them were, how many of them were there. I didn't even kind of, they may have mentioned how many prisoners there were in the movie, but. Now, the other thing that I loved, and that I'm biased here because I worked for the special effects company that did the effects for Alien 3, but I did love the special effects. I thought the alien looked fantastic. Even the rod puppet, which was very poorly composited, it was kind of like the, pushing the limits of optical effects. So you had some, really poor composites. And I'm talking chemical optical effects. This is before computers were used for compositing.
Yeah.
But I thought that the movement of the puppet was very interesting, very cool, kind of gave it a little more of an inhuman quality rather than being a guy in a suit that you could only shoot, in extreme close-up or, from the waist up or something like that before it just looked like a guy standing there in a, awkward shaped suit. I thought that was fantastic.
I mean, for the limitations of effects at the time period, it really is state of the art.
Yeah, and the
achievement, how believable so much of it was.
Yeah, the alien effects were great. The animatronic of Bishop when they she plugged him back in. I remember sitting in the theater and being baffled, going like, half his face is gone, but that looks like a real person. Like, how are they doing? And that's before you could just CGI away part of somebody's face.
Right.
So there were some great accomplishments in there. There was great cinematography, but again, this is my problem. And I'll kind of admit I'm not much of a David Fincher fan overall. He does great work. I don't deny that he does great work, but he's just not my cup of tea, so to speak. And I really kind of didn't like the. It seemed to have that. I remember at the time thinking this looks like a Madonna video, not realizing that he was the guy that directed the Madonna videos I was thinking of. The way that the camera was just like constantly moving in these up angles, and it looked a little too pretty. Like Ridley Scott did a fantastic job with the cinematography, but it still looked like a down and dirty, like lived in space. Where
Right.
this looked like it was, lit like a music video, and it just looked a little too tonally off. And I thought that James Cameron did a great job of matching the look of Ridley Scott's work and kind of staying in keeping with that. So that was a little bit jarring. But and I asked you a question before we kind of got, because you remembered your other point, we forgot about it. But would you have, say they came to you and said, hey, we're doing Alien 3, we want you to write it. Is it possible now to think of, what kind of story you might have told with it? Or do you, is Alien 3 too much in your mind?
Yeah, Alien 3 is too much in my mind, and I don't know. I mean, I don't even know where I would go with any kind of story in the Alien franchise. I mean, I've done a couple of Aliens comic stories, but
which ones have I read though?
I did Superman Aliens 2, and it's set in Kirby's Fourth World, and that was a whole lot of fun. And then for Dark Horse, I did a one-shot called Aliens Pig.
I remember that. Yeah, okay.
But nothing, nothing feature length or that wasn't a crossover. So, and the funny thing is about the Alien universe, it's thought provoking in that if you're a creative person, it makes you think about all the possibilities of that universe, and it makes you want to explore it.
Yeah, and like you said, since I was a kid, I was a fan of the Alien franchise. As a matter of fact, I am mildly on the autism spectrum, so I think I might have had even a little bit of that Asperger's fixation for a while. So yeah, as a fan, you have time to think about what you think the Alien universe is. For me, with the disappointment with Prometheus and Alien Covenant, with both movies which I enjoyed, but I felt like maybe Ridley Scott wanted to make I don't think he wanted to make Aliens movies. I think he wanted to make Blade Runner movies or something like that. And they told him, well, you got to set it in the Alien universe. But I always imagined the space jockey being something so completely, at the Mountains of Madness style alien in that sense of the word, not a guy in a suit. I really wanted to see that, and I thought a lot of potential was lost there in not giving the audience that. And you also have to keep in mind that the original Alien was Ridley Scott, but it was also Dan O'Bannon, and it was also H.R. Giger. There was a synergy there that I think really kind of made it more than what any one of them could have done. And when Ridley Scott went back to the franchise, it was just him completely in charge of, what it was going to be. And I almost feel like Alien Covenant was kind of like a space island of Dr. Moreau, which is fun. But with, now I forgot where I was going with that. It was going to come.
Well, the thing about Alien Covenant is it really explores entirely the real horror of these creatures, is that they're so adaptable, that you just don't know what's coming from where. I always said that the Alien franchise was different than any other horror franchise because you could literally open the glove compartment of your car and be in trouble. Because you simply didn't know where the next shock was coming from. Was above, below, there was no getting away from whatever this critter was.
Yeah, and that is really kind of, to me, what that derelict spacecraft represented. I always thought it would have been really interesting to do. Now I'm diving way into the imaginary world of Christopher, but if I were to be in charge of rebooting the franchise, say as like a Netflix series or something like that, where you kind of take the original movies and kind of rework them, I would have thought it would have been interesting to explore an egg chamber that had different size eggs, as if this thing was carting around. Because people always say, oh, look at the alien egg. They're the perfect size for a human face. Well, what if these things were, like you said, that adaptable where you could get giant eggs for giant species or, little eggs for, the mice or whatever. But
that would mean larger and smaller queens. That's interesting.
Yeah, or maybe something different than the queen. I do like the idea of the queen.
So the face hugger was easily adaptable for one of the old the elder race.
Yeah, I don't know, but
it had legs. It had legs. It was adjustable.
Or maybe it could expand or contract to fit a face. We don't.
The leg. I mean, when it attaches to a human, the legs are almost completely around the head. On a space jockey, they would have just slapped themselves over the nose and mouth, I guess.
Yeah, possibly.
Did this get geekier?
Yeah. No, I mean, I love this stuff because
obviously so do I.
It's the idea of something. I mean, Dan O'Bannon said that the inspiration came from stories like H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness, and it's very similar. The mountains they enter the mountains and the not the Shoggoth city. I forget the name of the race. The Shoggoth were essentially what the alien turned out to be. Right. But when they enter the city, it's a lot like entering the space jockey ship, the derelict spacecraft, and for me, exploring the malleability of that creature is very interesting. And, taking it back to Alien 3, like you said, it comes out of a dog. The movie was on a budget, and it was on a terrible schedule. And for me, that's, that excuses some of the stuff, but ultimately most audience members don't care about production. for me, I would have just made some little tweaks to the movie that would have appeased what you're talking about, what you like about Alien 3, and also kind of left the fans of Aliens with something that didn't make, leave a bad taste in their mouth. I, for one, would have just had Ripley wake up on that planet and, go, where's the others? And they would just say, what others? We just found you. So then that leaves the question in Ripley's mind, well, what happened to them? It might have just been me that got ejected. And also what that does is that gives her character something a little more to fight for, because that was one of the problems I had with Alien 3. By that time, she's lost everything. And what is she fighting for? She's fighting for Earth. I can't let these things get back to Earth. But, it's a bit nebulous for me, because Earth is, I live on Earth, great. But, it's like, what specifically is she invested in about Earth? She doesn't have any family back there, is she, otherwise she's very noble for wanting to sacrifice herself for Earth, but it's run by the company, blah blah blah. So if she would have had just like maybe newts floating around out there somewhere, that would have made her sacrifice a little more worth something to me.
I thought part of her sacrifice was a middle finger to the corporation, that you're not getting this thing. I'm going to die anyway, but I'm not going to die and let you have this thing.
Yeah. Well, again, this is the I guess my feeling about, now I have no love for a lot of corporations, especially in this day and age. But for me, the cliche of the evil corporation, it's like, oh, they're just a bit too evil. It's like, for me, I'm thinking corporations have people in there too. It would have been interesting if there were people within the corporation going like, no, she's right. We shouldn't be messing with this thing. It's...
Well, yeah, but, that's going to happen. But I'm not an anti-corporation person either, but usually the bastards win in a corporation.
Yeah.
Look, one of the most powerful corporations in the world, their motto is don't be evil. Now, if that doesn't make everyone suspicious, why would you have to state that? I'm sorry.
No, you're right. I mean,
that's like buying a used car from Honest John.
Yeah, exactly. What was that in Little Big Man? That was what he was doing. Wasn't that what the name of the guy that was like ripping him off was Honest John?
Yeah. It was Honest John, yeah.
Honest John wouldn't. He's Honest John.
I mean, it's like recently, there was like a little civil war inside of Amazon, where Amazon changed their algorithm to favor products that were more profitable to Amazon rather than be relevant to your searches. And there was a fight within the corporate hierarchy of people saying that's wrong, but they lost.
Yeah. Well, you see this all the time, essentially. I mean, without getting political, but you see essentially like the people who...
It's moral,
What's that?
There's nothing political about it. It's moral.
Yeah, you see a lot of these organizations, though, their statements are essentially the antithesis of what they really are. They essentially say, like, they call themselves, like you said, I'll just make something up, the really good guys who want to do everything right and honestly.
Yes.
As the name of the organization of the people who are like the most underhanded of all. And, but they go like, you try and call them out and they're like, but we're the guys who want to do everything right and honestly. Surely you can't be against that.
Well, the thing is, it's not like anti-corporation to be suspicious. I mean, I'm suspicious of any group that has more than 3 people in it, because one of them is going to be a bastard, and that bastard's going to rise to the top. I'm equally suspicious of governments, charities, non-government organizations, religious orders. I mean, you have to be suspicious of everybody, because it's the nature that when you get a group of people together, somebody's going to try to be on top. And that person who's on top usually isn't the nicest person in the bunch.
This is my feeling about the PTA every time I go to one of my kids' school events. I see that table and I'm like, these guys are gonna put an alien on my face. I know it. Was it somebody said they could never watch Mad About You without thinking that Paul Reiser was going to betray Helen Hunt?
Something was going to pop out of the closet.
So, anyway, but yeah, I always thought it would have been. There were some strange things that happened in Alien 3, and like I said, Bishop showing up, and then having his ear smacked off the side of his head, and that whole idea, that whole scene where he's just like, no, the corporation sent me to send a friendly face. I'm like, why didn't they send a Bishop android? like how much time did they have to get this guy? Like, they call him up at home? Did he just happen to be like, hey, are you flying by that planet right now? Yeah, I am. Like, oh, we want to offer a friendly face. Here's the situation. Oh, that sounds great.
That's an idea that probably came up in a production meeting. You're like, oh, that's such a cool idea. And they just made it work, or didn't make it work, as it were.
Yeah, there's definitely, like you said, ideas that you have when you're drunk. You see them a lot. People go like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we did this? And you went like, it sounds like fun, but if you really think about it, it's not going to hold up. It's like memes.
That's not how production meetings go. The producer comes up with an idea, and your job is to sit there and go, that's a great idea. Yeah. And then curse him afterwards and try to figure out how to make his stupid idea work.
Oh, I would be so fired working for some of these.
Oh, that's why I've never gotten anywhere in Hollywood. I can't keep my mouth shut. That's ridiculous. While everybody else is going, that's a great idea, JB.
Well, now
I give all the reasons why it won't work.
I think I've just ruined all of the Aliens franchise for myself in this entire podcast.
You look smart at it.
We've picked at it too much. Now, this is one of those things too. It's like, I love the Aliens franchise, and part of me is just like, it's time. It's like Star Wars, Star Trek, like all these franchises I love, but I'm just like, it's time for them to stop. But I keep seeing, or like the Terminator franchise, I see that.
Oh, it's time for that franchise to stop.
Oh, it was time for that to stop after 2.
Don't subject us to any more, of these horrible movies.
Well, that's the thing, is they're made by people who go, I could do better than that, and you go, no, you can't. It really is. The problem is a lot of these movies, everything that you really had to say, and this holds true for the original Alien as well, everything that you could say was said, and to expand upon it is interesting, but you really you're trying to recapture lightning in a bottle. And part of me does say to myself, yeah, the Alien universe, there's so much potential there for some really interesting stuff, but it's almost to me like they're going like, what's the least interesting take on this that we can make a film about? They always kind of, I don't know if they're playing it safe or what. Other franchises, Star Wars it's just over, it's done.
Well, it's for me for a long time.
Yeah, Terminator, it was a product of its time. The technology has changed so much and become so much more advanced than what the original Terminator movies even portrayed it as being. So, to have like a metal skeleton walking around now, bent on annihilating the human race, it's fun to watch in the context of the time it was made. But now it's just, I don't know. I feel like we could come up with some better technological threat, because we're kind of living in the world of technological threats.
Terminator could be, hell, the killing robots they can create now make the Terminator look quaint.
Exactly. And, I'm much more afraid of, Alexa than I am with the T-1000, to be quite honest, and I don't know what else, like Star Trek, what are we, like, we're almost 50 years into Star Trek now.
Well, the problem with Star Trek, and the problem with a lot of these franchises, but Star Trek's a good example, is the thing about Star Trek is, if you're a Star Trek fan, you love the characters. You really do love the characters. and you just want to see them in good stories.
Mm-hmm.
But what the franchise does is it wants to explore their characters more. I don't want to know anymore. I know everything about Captain Kirk that I want to know. All right, I already think the guy's fantastic. Just put him in some good stories. And it's true of the superhero franchises. I mean, I want to see a good story with Batman in it, not another story about Batman that's all just about Batman or just about his villains. Put him in a good story and put him through his paces. And that's true of all these franchises. I mean, that's where the Aliens franchise is going, where it's beginning to look into its own navel and explore itself too much. It's like, no, just give me a rip-roaring adventure with, aliens.
And going back to Batman for a second, I mean, how many times have we seen Batman's parents murdered in an alley? It's like...
I mean, you don't know that origin going in. I mean, did we ever see James Bond's origin? Did they have to keep revisiting where he went to school and how he got his training? No, we never saw it once. Why? Because we don't give a damn. We just want to see the guy, shooting people and getting the girl. It's that simple.
Yeah, and with Batman, like I said, they just keep... I remember when Batman versus Superman came out, and I was like, oh no, we're doing the... we know who Batman is. We just want to see him... do, like you said, do something cool. And Batman is, in a way, he's become, in a lot of people's minds, kind of the Grant Morrison Batman, where it's kind of a cliche. Like, he could, whatever the problem is, he's just going to instantly solve it before anybody else catches on. And, it's like, I like that Batman, but it kind of, I don't know. I'm going astray. Because Batman did fight the aliens too, by the way, because I got to bring it back on topic.
Yes.
Excellent work by Bernie Wrightson. Beautiful artwork by him. And oh, by the way, hey, let's talk about this for a second, though, in the aliens topic. My favorite aliens artists of all time, H.R. Giger aside, I'm talking about in comic books, are Dave Dorman for the covers.
Yeah.
And I think Kelly Jones does an excellent job of illustrating that kind of horror look, and it fits so well with the aliens aesthetic. Are there any particular artists whose work you've seen that you're like, oh man, they really can draw the alien well?
Well, I mean, on Superman Aliens, I worked with John Bogdanoff, inked by Kevin Nolan, and the aliens were, gorgeous. But yeah, I can't think of anybody. Dave and Kelly, obviously, premier. Mark Nelson on the original series Dark Horse too.
Oh yeah, that was beautiful work.
Born to draw, this kind of stuff.
The first Dark Horse series, the Nelson ones, and I forget the name of the airbrush artist that came after that. And,
yeah. I know who you mean. It's a French last name, but I can't remember.
He did an excellent job with that kind of, not just the aliens, but getting that colonial marine look.
Yeah.
And then as bizarre as his style is, I really love Sam Keith's work on aliens. I just love Sam Keith. There's something, people call him an acquired taste, but yeah,
he is.
But I
haven't acquired it yet.
What's that?
I haven't acquired it yet.
No, not into Sam Keith. I always like his work on Marvel Comics Presents, that really bizarre, overly hairy, overly shredded spandex Wolverine that he did. I always thought that was fascinating to look at. But yeah, this has just gotten too amicable. I thought we were going to end up in the octagon over this, but I've got I'm seeing your point.
I yours as well. I mean. We've come to a common ground.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is just watch Alien. Let the others go. Alien is a beautiful movie, though. I mean, it is one that I can't get enough of. I've been watching it. I even watched it a few weeks ago. It's one of those movies you just put on if you're doing something, and then like it just sucks you in no matter what, no matter how many times you've seen it. You see a little bit more of
it's seamless. It is seamless.
The beauty of the camera work, the story is fantastic, the mood it sets, and I really want to see more horror in space like this. I think people have been trying to, in either knockoff movies or big budget movies, everyone's trying to kind of capture a little piece of what Alien accomplished. And I really kind of love the idea of the mysteries and horrors of space. So I do want more of it. But at the same time, every time somebody else tries to get me more of it, I'm usually like, kind of disappointed for the most part. You know, every once in a while you get something good, but I don't know. I think we were spoiled. You know, I didn't know it as a kid, but there were just so many great movies. Alien was fantastic. The Thing, Predator. You know, we just got all these great movies, and it seems like now we've got people imitating them, thinking that they've got something to add, but they haven't quite found their own voice. So I don't know where we're going to find that from, but.
Well, the problem with all of these things you mentioned in Terminator as well is these were high concept ideas that were surprising at the time. And you really can't surprise a person a second time. You know, once they figure out how the Jack in the Box works, they're not surprised the next time it pops out. So, you know, what Hollywood really needs to do is come up with new stuff. But they're never, you know, obviously never going to do that because we've never seen anything new. And recently, every time they've tried to start a new franchise, it fell apart and didn't go anywhere.
This is a really interesting dilemma. I think part of the problem is that these movies, like you said, they surprised people, but they weren't like Alien was a big budget movie for the time, but it wasn't the biggest budget.
No.
And Terminator, the original Terminator, was a low budget movie. I think it was something like $3 million. Again, like we talked about before with Cameron, the creativity came out of the limitations.
Right.
Now, like if they're starting a new franchise, they're sinking like over $100 million into it right out of the gate. And they're, you know, or you get the people who are trying to keep these franchises going and they're sinking hundreds of millions of dollars into them. And the new generation doesn't have the same, they're not impressed, you know. My daughter is impressed with the Conjuring universe. She wants to see ghost stories, and those are low-budget movies.
Universe. I love the Conjuring universe. Well, that's a great franchise.
I'm gonna say that I've said this in other podcasts, but I was interviewing Doug Tate, who played the werewolf in Annabelle Comes Home, and we were discussing the great thing about the Conjuring universe franchise is, you know, they can be cheesy at points or have their own problems, but they deliver on what they promise every single time.
Right.
The audience knows what they're showing up for. And you can pick apart those scripts, but I don't think the audience is coming there for, you know, like overly, you know, complicated or well thought out scripts. They're coming for like a fun house, you know, haunted house scare, and they get that every time.
They're very earnestly made. You know, the people making them are very serious about making them, you know, what the audience wants to see. The other thing I like about them is that the only feel-good horror franchise. The good guys generally win in the end, and you leave the theater going, "Hey, you know, God still loves us." You know, and I think that's the key to that. And the characters, I like the recurring characters. I mean, I would watch them in 100 movies.
Yeah, there's really a lot that can be done with them, and I think there are some great lessons to be learned about them. Like I said, I watch my daughter for what she likes because she's a big horror movie fan. She loves Aliens. She liked Aliens. She loved Aliens. I told her not to bother with Alien 3 because she really liked. She loved Newt, and I was like, "You don't need to see Alien 3."
Yeah.
She did enjoy Alien versus Predator and the Aztec.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
It was, you know, and I kind of liked that because that was like a comic book movie. Like it had the same fun aptitude that the Dark Horse comics had. So I was like, okay, this is goofy, but it's enjoyable, and the effects were great. They used a lot of miniatures in there. They built an alien queen for it. Also, Studio ADI.
Well, and also, you know, like you said about the Conjuring universe, that movie delivered what it promised.
Exactly.
Alien versus Predator. Well, yeah, we saw a lot of that. And it was badass. I mean, it was really well done.
It was. The next one was kind of, it was a little,
Yeah, what a nightmare that was.
yeah, it was just kind of, it didn't know what it wanted to be.
No,
Uh,
there was no budget. I don't know where they spent the budget for that movie. That movie probably got lumbered with part of the budget from a Tom Hanks movie that underperformed. Boy, that's a rotten movie. That
I,
is just from beginning to end.
ADI has stories about that movie being made, and it was one of those things where you kind of listened, like you said, you listened to, you know, some of the ideas that were batted around, and you, like, there could have been some fun stuff, but you know, everybody. I'm not even going to begin to speculate.
Yeah, I mean, I can picture the production meeting of some moron saying, "We need a teen cast."
Well, I will recant this story, which not recant, or maybe that's the right word. I don't.
Well, you recant it later.
Yeah. But Alec has said before with the Pred Alien, which I have my own story about, but I'll tell that another time. But the Pred Alien, they had a really great design for it. And they, I don't know, some tour going through the studio or something like that, and they saw like a 14-year-old kid, and they're like, "You're the target demographic. Come here, tell us what you think of that." And he looked at the maquette for this really cool looking Pred Alien. And he's like, "Oh, that's a pretty cool looking alien." And the studio people went, "Alien? You don't see the Predator in it?" It started like this kind of just casual comment from this kid, and they started overthinking it, going like, "It needs more Predator," like. We got to redesign everything right now, and so emergency meetings and redesigns, and
I hate that stuff.
Yeah, and it's just like, just have a little faith in what you're doing. But yeah,
they never have faith. I mean, we're here talking about how Alien was seamless and everything else. Well, you had Ridley Scott, and some hotshot producers, creative producers. Walter Hill and David Giler, and they were kind of left alone by the studio because 20th Century Fox just wanted another sci-fi hit.
Yeah, after Star Wars.
And at the time, Fox was willing to admit they didn't know what was good and what was bad because they didn't think Star Wars was going to perform. So they were sort of left alone, and that's when people do their best stuff. And then. For the rest of the franchise, it's many fingers in the pie. What about this? What about this? What about this?
Oh, with David Fincher on Alien 3, that was absolutely what he was dealing with constantly.
Yeah.
Was story notes, and he got really defiant. He again, someone told me the story of going to see him and having to stand by his desk while he was on the phone with an exec, just going, "Then fire me. Go ahead, just fire me. You can fire me." It's just like daring them, going like, "Go ahead and fire me." But I guess they didn't. He walked away from from post-production. They were left on their own to do whatever they want with what he shot. So I don't know. So I still can't bring myself to enjoy Alien 3, but there are many people who do. There are many people who agree with you. And you go into the aliens and or the Aliens versus Predator Galaxy community or wherever, Perfect Organism podcast. There are a lot of people that have a lot of love for Alien 3 and a lot of people who love aliens, and some people love both somehow. But I mean it. I'm kind of like, maybe I should just stick with Alien. But I'm hoping as a filmmaker that I can make some things that are exciting to other people. And there are, for people who love Alien and the Aliens franchise, do you have any recommends, movies or comic books or novels that you feel sit on a shelf well with that maybe people have not discovered and might enjoy?
Wow, I'm probably going to think of one 15 minutes after I'm off, but I can't think of anything right now.
I got to say, at the moment, I just discovered not too long ago a Japanese horror manga artist, Junji Ito, who does these great kind of Lovecraftian stories, and I'm really impressed. It's not. What I like about it is it can sit well on a shelf with like the H.R. Giger aesthetic or that kind of cosmic horror aesthetic, but it's also its own thing. A lot of body horror, a lot of creepy situations that make you kind of think, "Ugh, I'm glad I'm never going to be in a situation like that." But I enjoy that. I like seeing things with mandibles and tentacles, and like you said, they can come out of anywhere. They're inescapable. Like once they've gotten their foothold on things, it's not ever going to go back to the way that it was. And that's kind of a very interesting horror concept for me that I would like to explore more. And I should, but anyway, I think we've taken this conversation as far as we can, unless you have anything that you want to add about it.
No, except my main defense for Alien 3 is that iconic imagery of Ripley encountering the alien and the alien passing her by. I mean, that's an amazing frame out of the movie. Where it's literally inches away from her face, and she's prepared to die at any second. And then it sniffs her and goes away.
Well, I gotta say, before I saw the movie, when that trailer first dropped, and I saw that shot, like, yeah, I was like, I couldn't think of anything else, and that definitely has stayed in the lexicon of movie images that if you get those books of like classic movie images, like Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett or whatever, yeah, it does like fit in there. It's going to be a part of movie history for a long time. So
and I do have a recommend. I didn't wait till 15 minutes after the show.
Oh, great.
There's a novel called Luminous and Ominous, and it's by Noah Mullet-Gilman. And it's about an alien species invading Earth in a very, very different way. It's like an invasive fungus that comes to Earth, and the novel is it's almost a literary science fiction novel. It's so well written and so engaging and so completely different. But it's very much like the alien thing, where it's nature's a bitch, and the human race is not going to survive this threat.
Nice. That does sound good.
Yeah.
And I will once again say, and there's a link in the description, please check out Thrilling Comics, Murder and Mayhem by Chuck Dixon, Clint Stoker, and David Fuhr. Am I saying it right? I never
know. I've never spoken to him, so your guess is as good as mine.
It looks fantastic. And I'm also going to plug my own new website, which is Digital Practical FX. That's the letters fx.com. If you go there now, there's nothing yet, but this is going to be filmmaking, special effects, practical effects assets that you can use, you can get a license for and use in your own film. So if you want creature, tentacles, mandibles, blood splatters, slime, and other effects assets, it's going to be there. You can drag and drop them into your own project and own the license. So you can make your own horror or science fiction movie with nasty creatures in it. We're working on that right now, and bookmark that site because we're going to be going live with some visual effects asset packs soon. And also, I feel like there was something else I want to shout out. Oh yeah, speaking of Studio ADI, who did the effects for Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, and the Aliens vs. Predator movies, they are having a moving sale. They're changing locations of their studio, so they are going to have special effects props, maquettes, gags, all for sale from their showroom floor and from their storage. If you're a movie memorabilia collector, go over to Alec_Gillis on Instagram and check out what he's got going on, because you may want to collect something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff going on at the moment, and I'll try and leave links in the description. Chuck, hang on after we're done with the show for just a few minutes.
Sure.
But I want to say thank you so much for being on and having this debate. And I'm so glad that you're not going to kick my butt in the octagon.
No, I wouldn't look forward to that.
All right. Well, thanks so much, and we will be back with more episodes, and hopefully we have Chuck on for some. I'll find something else to debate you on.
You'll find something else.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.